First Edition Week Day 2. Moving on to the female character of the franchise, and probably one of the best written female Transformers ever. This is hands down my favorite incarnation of Arcee ever, and her toy is certainly living up to it. This bike mode is gorgeous. Perfect shade of blue going on here. Translucent windshield, very nicely done, going into the headlights in the front. Everything very nicely detailed all the way through. She does make a very convincing little crotch rocket style motorcycle. You do have enormous pieces here that obviously come off to form arm blades, so there's a little bit of mechanical detail. Other than that, they're pretty much made just for robot mode, obviously, because they really don't fit in here. If you don't like them, you can remove them, though they actually provide more stability than the kickstand on this toy. So just in case, it's optional whether or not. Well, you've pretty much seen them now, so I'll go ahead and pluck them off. Two little pins hold it on. You want to be very careful because they are very thin little pegs. At least one of them is very thin and quite long. You can see there. So just be very gentle when you work these pieces off. You wouldn't want to, you really wouldn't want to damage those. You can see the kickstand does work. It is far less stable, but she will stay up, so no worries there. You can now see a little bit more of that detail worked in. The exhaust pipe, for instance, which they were wise enough to paint silver. Rear fender there, multi-layered, looking very nice. Wheel inside has been painted. Again, spins very nicely. I'll actually say that. It is absolutely useless for a motorcycle, unless you're holding on to it, but her wheels do roll exceptionally well. At least mine do. Apparently my Bumblebee was misassembled. A lot of people said that their Bumblebee rolls fine. So I guess quality of rolling is another thing to chalk up to. Mileage may vary. I get sick of saying that. I would hope for consistency. Well, there's really not a whole lot to look at here because, well, the motorcycle's pretty much the same on both sides. I can point out some more details here. The front is done very nicely. You can see the spokes, you can see the front forks. A little bit of molded detailing there on the fender. The gauges on the inside. They're molded in, no paint on them though. They're made a little soft, so not like vinyl soft, but just soft enough that they're not going to break under any major stress. The only real distraction here is how thick she is from the top, since there really isn't anywhere to store her arms. They're just kind of there on the sides. Detail-wise, you can see the seat, the gas tank, and the gas cap left unpainted for just to make it stand out. And this rear piece here, which I don't know what it's called. I'm not a big motorcycle guy. I just watch American Chopper every now and then. That's all I can really do. I will also point out slightly pink silver paint. So that's pretty much all there is to the vehicle. It's nice and simple. It does what it's supposed to do, and it looks quite a bit like she does in the show. So let's get her into robot mode where I can show you what she's really all about. Transforming Arcee to robot mode can be tricky the first couple times you do it, but once you're used to how her parts move, you'll actually find that it's very intuitive. There really isn't any wasted components here, and there's very little backpack to speak of. The only parts to really watch out for are when you're folding the feet down from the legs, because it's a very stiff hinge, but it's not going to snap on you or anything. And the windshield can be a little tricky to get out from behind the handlebars. Just give it a wiggle or two, and the handlebars will flex a bit if you're having trouble getting it out. Really, the trickiest part is the backpack, because there's so many different ways to arrange it. Just put it however you think is best to get the kibble out of your way. In robot mode, Arcee is something of an Amazon. She is a very tall deluxe. At least this Coke can says so. She does have quite a bit of height to her for a female Transformer. You'll also find that her transformation was clever enough to use a lot of joints that come into play into robot mode. For instance, just to show you quickly, I'll go into articulation later after we get the details out of the way. Since her arms completely fold up, she has 180-degree elbows. That's so rare to see on a Transformer these days. Seriously, we'll get into articulation a bit because I could go on for days about it. Let's go into some of the detail here. You can see where the seat was has now formed her belly, giving her a lot of definition in robot mode. Very nice proportions. She's definitely female. Definitely female. You can also see where a lot of the paint apps here have gone into extra details. For instance, both sides of her legs have that pinkish silver paint. I remember, even in the Cybertron days, Hasbro would cheap out and only paint the outsides, so I'm actually kind of glad to see the extra attention to detail here. Works out very nicely. The colors aren't completely accurate to the show, though. Her arms are completely black, as you can see, where the forearms should be blue. I don't have the model handy with me, so I'm sure there's a little bit that's off here and there. You can see the chest, which unfortunately doesn't quite lock down, but once you get into that position, it's stiff enough to stay where it is. Autobot logo right there on her collar. Really like how that folds over the gas tank area to form her chest. You've got these, the shoulder wings, which seem like they should be able to go up farther, but you really wouldn't want them to. They're going to hit that handlebar and restrict some of the articulation. Again, you can get the handlebars out of the way. Like I said, there's a lot of ways of working that backpack. I prefer it like this with the tire back out, so you can't really see it when she's just standing static. The head sculpt is actually quite nice. It's a very expressive face she has on her. Really gives her a little bit of personality. This is the more calm-looking RC from the show. See, that same slightly off silver color reflecting as well on her horn and the outline of her face. A little bit of light piping around where her ears are, too. A little strange. Actually, we'll give that a quick test, and yep. Brilliant blue light when shined through, and yeah, her ears glow. Okay, that's a little odd. You're not Wheeljack. You're RC. Eyes only. Still, exceptional job on the detailing here. Really happy with her. Very well painted. Well sculpted, too. There's a lot of detailing going on that I actually quite like. But now comes my favorite part of the toy. We're going to talk articulation here. We start from the top down, where her neck is double jointed. It hinges at the base and fully ball jointed head. Lots of range of movement there. Shoulders rather. Why am I getting elbows and shoulders mixed up so much in these reviews? It is ball jointed, but it is a little bit restricted by her wings. Thankfully, you can adjust those just in case they get in the way of a pose. Bicep swivel, the double jointed elbow as seen, and wrists that fold over. Also, thanks to transformation, she has a waist joint, though it does look a little bit awkward from the wrong angle. Still, if you need it, it's there. Ball jointed hips and rotation there as well. Huge piece of knee bending going on there. Also left over from transformation, just like the elbows. Adding some great posing options. Again, no angle tilt. Again, she's molded to stand naturally with her feet more apart. I will say that she doesn't really have a balance problem. Here's where the engineering got really smart. She has the high heels typical of a female Transformer, but those fenders also have extra heel spurs. So she actually has a lot more balance than it initially looks like. Now see, I'm not doing rotational posing shots for this series because I wanted it to be a little bit more simple since I'm doing so many of them, but it's hard to resist posing this toy. I mean, she gets into so many poses so easily. She can do things that most other Transformers can't. It's hard to do on screen, but I have seen where she can actually cross her arms believably. And she has enough range of motion to do it. It can be done better than this, though this is just a quick on-camera take on it. It's very hard to get a Transformer that can even have his arms meet at the chest, let alone fold over themselves like that. So much articulation. I mean, outside of like a high-end Japanese figure, it's kind of hard to find that in an action figure this size, especially on an American toy shelf. Now, for accessories, you remember those blades that are hanging off the sides. We do have them here. Now, these do replicate the blades that she has in the show. However, they are ludicrously big on RC. This is the drawback of her, and it's probably the one drawback she has, that the arm blades are nowhere near the size that they are in the show, and it's something of a distraction. I'm kind of okay with them. I do wish they were smaller. I do wish they were more accurate. And I wish mine actually went in a little bit better. The joint is very tight on mine, so I really don't like pegging them in here. This is where they store away if you don't want to use them as arm blades, and you don't want to lose them anywhere. So, at least they're not going to, even if you don't like them, at least they're not going to flop around. At least they can go somewhere where they're not as distracting. Again, that's a preference thing, however. If you like the blades, fine. Me, they're not quite my preference. Now, in comparing to the mainline RC, I cannot, because I do not own the mainline RC. That's kind of the tricky part. I do know that from the reports I've heard and from my friends' accounts, she actually lost the least amongst first edition toys making the transfer. She's a little bit smaller, but she actually has some more show-accurate colors. The forearms, for instance, are blue. She only has one blade, but it is the right size, and she has a huge cannon to make up for the missing blade. The big drawback on her is that she's going to have wings that go out to here, which is how they solve the kibble issue from vehicle mode. It basically just hangs the shell off of her back. That's pretty much it. So if you can deal with the angelic RC look, it should be a fine replacement. And in this case, you probably want to consider some sort of replacement. RC wasn't produced in the numbers that Bumblebee was, so she's actually a lot more limited. And because she is, hands down, far and away the best character on the show, she also commands a very, very high demand. So you're going to want an alternative if you don't want to pay top dollar on this thing. Again, if you're okay with the pink from the New York Comic Con version, it might be worth it just for how high quality this figure is. But due to her demand, she does command a much higher price than a deluxe typically does in the US, so really consider the mainline replacement. Though I will admit, she is one of my favorite deluxes from the first edition. As for my absolute favorite, tune in tomorrow.